Good morning, friends. Happy Monday. Here's your Monday Minute. Today I wanted to bring Trever back one more time. I feel like he has a lot of really effective things to share with us, particularly on the topic of conversation and communication. And there's a few things that he's going to share with us that I think are so important, and I think are things that all of us have run into, whether it's in relationships, in the working environment, with people we don't know, things like that. So, Trever, take it away.
So thanks for having me on again. I'm really excited. This is a skill that I learned pretty early on in my counseling education, and I was like, why don't we do this more often? And it's this concept of validating and reflective listening. And so they're two different things, but I think they're pretty similar on a base level. And so what validating is really just communicating to somebody that you heard them and what they're feeling, maybe pulling out what they're saying that they didn't say in words. And then reflective listening is kind of just speaking back to somebody what they've already said. So if I'm talking to my wife, and she's had a really hard day at work, and she tells me that this one coworker said something and it hurt her feelings, and she's just venting about it. One thing that I can do to validate how she's feeling and to reflect it is to say, you feel really upset because your coworker said this thing to you. And it makes sense why you would feel that way, because that wasn't a nice thing to say. I'm not adding much to this conversation. All I'm saying is, like, you said this and that makes sense. But for her, she hears that I'm hearing her, that I understand where she's coming from, and that she's not in the wrong. And we can get really complicated in this, but I think if we keep it at this level where we're just saying what they've said, we're saying, you're sad. That's it. Like, that gives so much validity to how somebody's feeling. And it surprisingly makes them talk way more about what's being said. Because if I say, Julia, you're happy because you're doing the Monday Minute with me again. And that makes sense because I'm awesome. What will probably end up happening is Julia will be like, yeah, it is fun. I really enjoy this.
It's true. I think there's something so significant, even though it's so simple, about knowing that you were heard, that somebody is actually listening to you. Because I think sometimes, especially in really familiar or comfortable relationships, we can kind of wonder, like, did they really hear me? Because they were kind of scrolling on their phone, or there was the TV on in the background, and, you know, did they just kind of hear me? And so to reflect and validate shows, hey, I really do hear you. You are important. I'm listening. And I think even sometimes there's room to validate whether something's right or wrong. You know, you're kind of talking about how if you were validating your wife, you know, showing her that she's in the right or valid for feeling the way that she feels. And sometimes I think there's space, even with our kids, like, hey, I can tell you're really upset right now. And maybe it's not an appropriate time for them to be like throwing a tantrum, but to validate and say, I can tell you're so upset right now. Let's go to the other room and talk about it, or, you know, something along those lines. But that validation piece is so key in letting someone say, hey, I see you.
And if you've seen the I feel statement episode of Monday Minute, I want to challenge you to think about what it would look like to have somebody say an I feel statement and to respond with this validating, reflective listening.
That's so good. I think that takes it a step further. And I think the cool thing about this is sometimes, especially with people that we may not know very well, or people in your workplace, or somebody that you've just met, I think sometimes when people say something, it feels a little bit awkward, like you don't know how to respond, or sometimes I think we feel like, oh, okay, well, it's my job to fix your feelings now. So your wife's feeling bad, so now it's your job to like make her feel better. When in reality, it's not anybody else's responsibility. And so by validating and reflecting, we kind of relinquish that responsibility, and we're just kind of present with people in their feelings rather than trying to fix it. And I think that can go so far, because we don't need people to fix us. That's our job, to fix ourselves, to kind of figure out what's going on inside of us and to move forward from our feelings. But to have somebody in it with us can be really, really impactful. So your challenge for this week is to see if you can practice validating and reflecting. Practice it with friends, practice it at work, practice it with people that you've never met before. they're less likely to be weird because they don't know what you normally are like. Practice throughout the week. See if it makes a difference. See what you notice inside of yourselves. Get yourselves to the weekend, enjoy it, and we'll see you back here on Monday.